Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Kirby. The Forgotten Land. I don't know why I was saying the right back at you as if we were doing the fucking
video review.
Video review of the. You know what? I don't know if we've ever had the chance to actually talk about it though.
More importantly, best new song in the game.
It's good. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't get it. It's not like I don't get why it's the best one in the game. It's fine. It's pretty. I don't know.
I mean,
explain why you subjectively like this song so much, Ryan. Jeez.
It fits the aesthetic incredibly well. It's got a very hummable melody. It's also just a very serene song, which is not usually Kirby's forte.
Yeah,
he tends to be more poppy.
Yeah, aside from Kirby 64, most of the Kirby soundtracks are very kind of very
bubbly and bouncy, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So it is a little unusual for sure.
The thing is, I don't actually think calmer music doesn't fit Kirby's tone either.
It depends on the mood the game's going for. Kirby tends to be pretty that poor guy.
You murdered that Awoofi in cold blood.
Yeah, pretty much. So it depends on the game. Part of why I think Kirby 64's soundtrack works so much is because that game generally plays a lot slower than the other games in the series. Most Kirby games are fairly fast-paced. And 64 is probably the slowest game in the series. The main series, I should say. Maybe Canvas Curse is slower in terms of overall.
Maybe. I'm not familiar enough with the series to say, but when it comes to video game music, I think that some people on, multiple sides of the video game music discussion tend to focus on one thing at a time. You'll get those people who really, really value their catchy melodies that they can hum that stick in your head. And, that's a cool thing to have. You also get those people who think that a video game soundtrack should be like a movie soundtrack. One way of phrasing it that I've heard said is that the music should only be there when it needs to be. But the thing about video games is that they're not movies.
It's also very true that some games want louder meaning more hummable and strictly catchy stuff, and some games want more music that is more in the background. It's almost gasp, different things apply to different scenarios, and there's not one catch-all thing for each individual instance. Man.
Well, the thing is, video games are
no, Ted, I missed it. Yeah, I knew there was something there, which is why I was jumping behind, but I missed the statue.
Looks like you're gonna have to do it later.
Man.
The thing about video games, though, is that you can't dictate their pace and tone in quite the same way that you can a movie. So, most of the time, the most effective music is the music that works best at complementing the feeling of a game at any given time. The idea of a game not having music, for example, is to make it more atmospheric, but the perception that a game needed to do that to be atmospheric only really came about because in the earlier days of video game design, memory limitations prevented us from implementing real dynamic music systems that could adjust their tone based on what was going on.
Yeah, there's also just the fact that certain games just that's the thing that I'm drawn to the most is that the feeling of the music should match the feeling of the game and whatever it's trying to do. A big example of that is like, have you ever tried to play a game like a Contra or a Metal Slug without the music?
It's really
the energy gets sapped out.
Yeah.
If you try to do that, versus like if you play a game like Tetris or Panel to Pawn. Not that music isn't catchy, but it's meant to more like kind of be a focus kind of sound.
It helps you get into
that's
the
a
flow
little
state, yeah.
Yeah, so those kinds of games are easier to play without the music because it's just like you can enter that kind of state without the music necessarily.
But it definitely does help to hypnotize yourself into Puzzle Brain. But like,
yeah, pretty much.
To swing this back around to Kirby, one of the things that I think Kirby would benefit from is being able to bounce back and forth between the relaxing music and the energetic music, because relaxing and energetic are two feelings that Kirby definitely has in different measures at different points during the gameplay experience. So, you know, depending on the scenery, depending on the specific energy level that a level is going for. Wow, that was awkward phrasing. The specific energy level that a stage is going for. I think different types of soundtrack can work really well for Kirby. And
yeah,
in this case, we're in, you know, serene winter wonderland places. So you don't really think energy when you think winter, do you?
No, I think I don't want to go outside.
Unless you're specifically on an outing to go skiing or sledding or something. Winter is a pretty laid back time, you know. That's just traditional to the human experience. You know, back in the day, food was a lot harder to come by during the winter, but you would also finished up farming for the year mostly. And, you know, it was a time of rest, both because it's the time of the year when farmers wouldn't be working and stuff, but also because there's less food, so you use less energy. Make that food go a little farther. But, like, as a result, winter in the public consciousness has this very vacation-y feeling to it. Hell, even school children get on that because winter to them means snow days.
Snow days and multiple weeks off for holidays / New Year's.
Yeah. And I mean, the reality of it isn't quite so pretty, especially in the modern day where work is a year-round thing and food is plentiful. Too plentiful.
Are
we
you
have too much
saying
of
we
it.
live in a capitalist dystopia? I refuse to believe that.
Not quite, not yet, but you know, we're on the like the front gate of one. It could go bad if things swing in a certain direction from here.
Oh man. Anyway, I guess just circling it back to this game. This game is strange in that I do agree that this is probably one of the most serene pieces the game the Kirby series has had in a good while. This game also just has some of the most like nonsense, and I'm not saying nonsense as in it's a bad thing, but like nonsense as in the final boss theme to this game is 7.5 minutes long on one loop. That's some Bravely Default soundtrack nonsense going on right there. Where I believe one of the Bravely Default super boss theme is something like
It's like 13 minutes.
It's like something like 13 minutes long, and the final boss theme's like 10. Or, you know, that's some like Xenoblade Chronicles ass ridiculous shit.
You know, sometimes having a long battle track can be helpful. I'm not saying it's necessarily
It's not always. Sometimes it's awesome. Like, especially for RPGs where the final boss can actually last upwards of 15 minutes or more.
Well, the one that comes to my mind is actually Devil May Cry 5's Virgil battle theme, which is way longer than the other battle themes. And I think they did this like deliberately because they realized that the length of the other battle themes was too short. But the thing is, you're going to be hearing that battle theme throughout the entire game, right? And because of the game's dynamic music system, you're going to be hearing different parts of it at different ranks. So they need each individual part of the music, the just music part, the lyrics part, and all of that, to be long enough that when hearing it multiple times throughout the game, it can start at different points and the music always feels different. So they wrote this epic 10-minute goddamn song for Virgil's battle theme that's basically a musical character study of the guy. And
Devil May Cry the musical? Yo, I'd watch that.
Well, like it's honestly the best battle theme in the series, but it's 10 minutes long, damn it. And like it works. The only problem with it is that Virgil is so overpowered that you might not hear very much of the battle theme at any one time.
Are you supposed to, like, I've never played Devil May Cry 5. Are you intended to, like, lose to Virgil in those fights, or do you beat him?
No. When I say Virgil, I mean the battle theme that plays when you're playing as Virgil.
Oh, when you're playing as Virgil. Oh,
yes.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah, everyone has their own battle theme when they're actually in fights.
The actual Virgil boss fight is 2 parts long and has multiple music tracks attached to it.
okay.
Like, and those tracks are great, but the battle theme they wrote for Virgil when you play as him is 10 minutes long, and that on the surface that seems excessive because like no individual battle is going to last more than a couple minutes tops, and that's if you're having trouble. Which you rarely will as Virgil, because Virgil is overpowered.
But is Virgil, like, you in Devil May Cry 5 though, you switch between which characters you're playing though throughout the main character,
in the main
right?
story mode.
In the main story, you switch between Dante, Nero, and V, but
right, he's a DLC, right?
Yeah, Virgil is DLC, and he plays every mission, which is a bit weird because the main campaign sort of jumps back and forth in time. So when you're playing as Virgil, none of the transitions line up properly. You'll jump forward and backward in the level design from mission to mission. But
all right,
you know.
all right, yeah. I was under I forgot that Virgil was DLC. I thought he was in the main campaign.
Yeah. Well, Virgil to this day has only ever had his own main campaign missions, quote unquote, in the Virgil's Downfall DLC to the reboot, which it's not good. I mean, the reboot itself is fine enough, but I don't like Virgil's Downfall. I will fight you all on that. Virgil's Downfall is awful. The DMC reboot was in that weird Castlevania Lords of Shadow time where games in the action genre and stuff tended to have these really cheap DLC chapters added to them that had these still frame animatics for cutscenes, even though the main game really prided itself on its cinematic real-time cutscenes.
It's so weird because, like, the common complaint, like, about games of that time and even games of today, honestly, is like, oh, they cut this out of the main game so that they can make it as DLC.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm not a game dev, so I don't know if that, like, actually is what happens. But you'd think that if they were cutting stuff out of a game to make it as DLC, at the very least, then they'd keep the production value of it.
Well, it's less that they cut stuff out of the game and more that, like, during pre-production, they section off certain important parts of story, saying to themselves things like, okay, we'll end the main campaign at the point where the frickin' Gabriel Belmont literally fights the devil and wins. But we'll keep the part where he becomes a vampire back for DLC, because that's important. He's gonna be Dracula, right? But, like, the result is that you get this cheap DLC chapter where you go through the castle areas again, with the little girl vampire that you met during the main story again. And it's the story of how Gabriel Belmont became a vampire, but you're going through the same levels again with cutscenes that are just little comic book stills. And it's like, you've got this really important part of the story that they're trying to tell that's relegated to a really unimportant position in the gameplay and a really unimportant position in the story presentation. So, it's like if The Hobbit ended with Smaug flying away, and the rest of the movie, the death of the dragon, the destruction of Lake Town, and the Battle of Five Armies, were told using little clay. What's that little blue clay guy? that old television show?
Gumby?
Gumby, yeah. If it was all told in Gumby stop motion instead of, the movie we got, it would be weird, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's also weird because, like, knowing what I know now about stop motion in that it's such a hard, like, animation to do, I have to wonder, like, what about it made it cheap back in the day? Because, like, if you ever watch, like, the most well-known stop motion thing probably is the Rankin Bass Christmas movies. Well, I guess Wallace and Gromit as well, but, like, in America for sure.
It's cheap to do in that you create one clay model and you move it frame to frame from one animation to the next, right? So it's not the same. So it's
more that it's time consuming, not so much that it's expensive in that sense.
Yeah, but you probably pay people by the hour in...
Oh, for sure. Not saying it's cheap animation, just you're building sets and you're building one model per thing you need. So
yeah, whereas with
Gumby is a very easy character to make.
The other thing is that, like, for actual CGI animation, right? You need back in the day, this was a much larger barrier to rendering out anything. But for CGI animation, you needed a powerful rig to not just create the animations, but also to render them out into a workable video file. So if you go back in time and read, like, developer accounts and production accounts of old CGI movies and old video games that heavily used pre-rendered components in their sprite work, you'll hear a lot about, like, the specific systems and software that they had to use to do that.
So do you guys remember near the end of Jurassic Park where, like, the girl is like, it's a Unix? For the longest time, that shit looked so fake that I thought it was just, like, some stuff that they had for the movie, like, oh, this is what their made-up dinosaur computer system looks like.
Yeah.
That's an actual operating system.
Yeah.
That they used for, like, I think it was, I forget the name of it, but this is the kind of CGI things that they used in the 90s for stuff like Donkey Kong Country to get those CGI graphics to work. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, this was slightly off topic, but I just find it funny that I found this out years later that the fake ass looking computer from Jurassic Park was actually a real software.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. I remember in the books they actually made a bit more of a point to describe the computers, and at the end of the Lost World, the user interface system has this really, like, complicated for the time 3D interface, and, like, you think they're building up to making the smart kids from the smart school, like, supercomputer whizzes, but no, the actual plot point is they must have some hardcore power cables running into these computers. Let's find where those come from and, sneak through the tunnels. And that was the entire purpose of the computer having the 3D interface system. But I think Michael Crichton wrote that scene in specifically so that the Lost World movie, which was the only reason he was writing a sequel in the first place, would have another scene with a computer in it.
Yeah, man. Imagine you're because Michael Crichton's written something like 50 books or more. Imagine you're, like, one of the most popular writers of the 80s and 90s, and then they're just like, hey, yo, can you put in a scene with a computer so that we can justify a computer in our sequel? Hey, thanks, bye.
That wasn't really what happened. What happened was Crichton was prompted to write a sequel so that they could do a sequel movie, and he wrote the book that he thought would make it a good movie. The oddball thing about that is, like, the Lost World novel has almost no plot, but it has a ton of really excellent action scenes in it that didn't make it into the movie. So he kind of overshot, if anything. Like,
Oh my god. It's like, okay, guys, I know you want to make a cool movie. Here's a million different scenes of dinosaurs being badass. Here you go.
it's like he was writing a book for a movie made in the 2020s with a massive CGI budget. So,
Oh
like,
my god.
some of the stuff he wrote made it in. The two T-Rexes are definitely from his movie, but some concepts like the massive carnivore that could camouflage itself didn't come in until Jurassic World.
What's better than one T-Rex? Two T-Rexes.
Jeez, Michael, why does your mom let you have two T-Rexes?
Because I wrote the book, damn it.
Of course, one thing that we'll never see in the movies is the scene where the scientists, like, very enthusiastically stalk a bunch of herbivores into the woods to watch their communal latrine habits. I could have done without that, honestly.
I mean, that's one of the most memorable scenes of the first movie. That's a lot of shit.
Well, yeah, but like this is a very detailed scene of how dinosaurs poop and pee in a communal sense.
Yeah, that's like, okay, then yeah, that's more like haha poop humor.
It's not really poop humor because
it's more just like look at them shit and you're like, ew, gross.
The thing is, like, he was legitimately writing a scene about the way scientists view that kind of thing, and it's like, okay, fascinating, but I'm not a scientist. I'm just a regular old reader.
I don't care.
I mean, I thought that they did a good enough job with that, like in the first movie too. Well, I don't know if that was in the book because I've never actually read the book.
It was, but it was a stegosaurus, and they spent a lot longer actually solving the mystery of what was making the dinosaur sick, and that played into them figuring out how much was wrong with the park before things went bad. Like,
yeah.
They found the velociraptor eggshells during that whole situation. I almost like I love the Jurassic Park movie. It's very good cinema, but I kind of wish that someone would do an extended Netflix streaming series adaptation of the two original books. It will never happen because the movie universe is so locked into its own canon by now. But
you know, I do think that it would be cool, especially with series that have like diverged so much. A good example, I read the original Frankenstein novel a couple months back, and if you've never read the novel, a lot of the Frankenstein that you know from pop culture, like the mad scientist in the castle with the hunchback servant and the green monster who's like, ugh, a lot of that's just not like the book at all. And I mean, there's a lot of cool iconography from the Frankenstein we know in pop culture. But with that said, I would really also like a modern adaptation of the original.
They tried that
book.
in the 90s. It didn't work.
I mean, you can try it again. The 90s was 30 years ago.
we probably have more sophisticated practical and special effects at this point.
Well, that's also the thing is that the monster is barely in Frankenstein. The movies, it's just a period piece for 80% of it. It's probably very cheap to make too. So anyway, just please try it, Universal. I'm begging you.